My name is Elijah Gomez, and today I want to start the first episode of my podcast called Traveling in a Wheelchair. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with who I am, um, I unfortunately suffered a brain injury at birth, and so therefore, my entire life, have had to use a wheelchair to get around. And um, today, specifically, I want to talk about traveling via airplane. I've had some pretty interesting experiences traveling via airplane. Um, Most of them are not good. And so, first, I want to talk about how hard it is to travel when you're handicapped like I am. Um, One of the biggest challenges that I face is the fact that I cannot take my chair on the plane with me, meaning that I have to let the airline take the chair underneath the plane with all the rest of the bigger luggage items that people are taking with them. And that also means that I have to sit in a regular plane seat, which that for me is not very comfortable after a couple of hours. And the fact that I cannot like see my chair or not let the airline or anybody like in charge of putting the chair on the plane, like the fact that I cannot like directly tell them what to do, it's kind of nerve wracking and uh, frustrating at the same time. Uh, there have been several instances where a person's chair has come back damaged after a plane ride, and I myself have had that happen to me once when I was very young, and I can actually give more stats about that later in this podcast. Um, but the instance where my chair's come back damaged, um, actually it came back in pieces, um, which was very unfortunate. With all that being said, this kind of helps me segue into my next topic, which is more specifically about me and my experiences traveling. Well, I've already kind of touched on my first experience when I was a very small child, but my more recent experience, um, that being when I was 21, I want to say, um, and the instance where I went to Disney World in February of 2022. And so when I went to Disney World, I was about to say February. When I went to Disney World, um, my parents had the idea of traveling through an airplane. And so I was very hesitant to do that. But we did it anyway. And um, my mom specifically spoke with um, the airport. She And she basically explained to them that this is a very expensive chair, the one that I'm sitting in. Is there anything that you can do to make sure this does not happen? Um, so they said, yeah, there's something that we can do. We can do this, that, and the other. And that was pretty much, unfortunately, not true. Um, After the flight to Florida, the chair did come back a little damaged. It did have a little crack in the back of the chair, but it wasn't anything near what I had experienced um, when I was a small child. So, luckily, nothing happened. Nothing happened getting there. But after the plane ride back home, something almost went horribly wrong. Um, what they do with the chair is they put it on a conveyor belt. Well, it's not exactly a conveyor belt, but it's kind of like one. Um, and they bring it out like that. But when I saw the chair from out my window, from out the airplane window, um, it was on its side. Now, for my chair, it is about a multi-thousand-dollar chair. That's very expensive and not easy to get or repair or replace it or get a new one at all. Um, and it weighs about 400 pounds. Anywhere, anywhere to about uh, 300 to 400 pounds. I always joke that it weighs as much as Shaquille O'Neal in his prime, uh, but that's just a joke. It is important to also note that getting a backup chair or some type of rental in for chair repairs is not an easy um, path. So if my main chair goes down, that spells bad news for me. So now you can understand my concern or my frustration um, when it comes to traveling through an airplane. Luckily, nothing was damaged after it was on its side, but things could have ended up a lot worse. And in a lot of instances, for a lot of people, things have ended up a lot worse. And I can give some stats to back that up. Actually, that's my next topic I want to get into. Um, According to TravelersUnited.com, airlines damage passengers' wheelchairs more than 200 times a week. And in an article written by Travel Weekly, states that last year, the 10 largest U.S. airlines mishandled 11,389 scooters, wheelchairs, or 1.54 of chairs that they carried. This stat should be eye popping to everyone listening. And I wish something would change, and maybe it will with this next topic that I'm about to bring up. Um, there is currently a movement to make airplanes accessible. Um, they've been trying to adapt the airplanes so that the chair can. There are several more stats that I can give you, but I just gave you two right there. Those stats should be very eye popping to a lot of you listening. But there is hope. There actually is a movement to make airplanes more accessible. The Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, who actually ran for president in 2020, wants to make it so that people in chairs can actually take their chairs on the plane with them instead of having to transfer out of the chair and take the chair in the underneath the plane. So that could be a possibility. I don't know how long it's going to take, but traveling otherwise, uh, is going to continue to be very difficult if nothing does change in the not too distant future, because this is very clearly not working for both myself, people like myself, and for the airlines, which I have to imagine this is negatively affecting them as well. Um, by the way of like either complaints or maybe even lawsuits. Um, but for me, traveling, I just prefer to travel via car. And so I know that takes a lot of gas and a lot of time. That takes up a lot of time. But the upside to taking a road trip is you get to see a lot of the stuff in a lot of the states that you have to go through to get to your destination. And so that's the fun part of having a road trip. I know there's a lot of memories that I've made um, on road trips. Um, but in general, I just hope this movement can gain a little bit of steam as time goes on. But who knows? Uh, I know these things tend to take a while, and so I really hope for the best. But overall, something has got to change. Period. Point blank. Something has to change. This is a major, major issue that, frankly, I don't think it's being talked about enough. Um, because um, a lot of people just aren't in chairs chairs like I am, and there's a lot more obstacles that people like myself have to go through that are very unfortunate that other people, like regular everyday people, don't even think about. Um, and so I hope that what I talked about today can bring some. I hope that I can be a voice and uh, bring a little bit of change and consideration for everything that I just said. And I know for me personally, one of my ideas of a dream vacation would be to go to Disneyland with my future wife. I'm not married right now. I'm not um at the time of this recording. Um but that's something I'd like to do, but based on where I live, that is not possible without going um through an airline in an airplane. So um yeah, that's just one of my uh, ideas for a dream vacation. So, um, and I also forgot to mention that that idea for a dream vacation um, would be without our children. So that makes it even more special. But anyways, um, I guess that's the end of my podcast. I know I'm only running on 15 minutes, and so that is all that I wanted to say. I hope a lot can change, and I hope it can move as quick as possible because this is a real issue. Like I said before, this is a real issue that nobody seems to be talking about, and something that needs to be addressed, that is being addressed, um, something that needs to be fixed very quickly. And uh, thank you for listening, and